Hi, this is Mark Kaufman on Anthology's Developer Relations Standards team, which was part of the integrations team. And I'm making this video to show you how you can determine whether an assessment is a proctored assessment before displaying your settings. So there are two ways to go about this. One is to just use the integrations code, the UEF integrations code. Probably in your code you have something like this where you're looking for this proctoring panel selector code. You say if I get a message, if I get a portal new and I have this settings, and if you don't, you want to add this. So if you get a portal new and it's a proctoring settings, what that means is that if we go back to our test here and we go to the settings here and we hit edit and we click on this configure proctoring settings, I'm going to clear this here. You can see that from Learn Ultra, we got a portal new with course content assessment settings, proctoring panel settings. Now we would never see that event unless proctoring was enabled. So if our code doesn't do anything, if we don't see that event, we're okay. Now what we've got here is we've actually got a panel. We've got a portal panel. It's this area right here. So we can put our proctoring settings right here in this space by using the code that is described here. We can use the portal ID that we get for that panel. This when we get the event, we get the portal ID. So we get the ID for the panel that's shown in this area, this small area here. Excuse me. And we can then put some contents in there, and then we can send the post message to render that content. And so the content that we set up for rendering shows up right here in this portal. This is the portal settings panel right here. It shouldn't be a separate panel. If you want a separate panel, you might need to go and do something like click a button here and then open a separate panel. As long as this panel doesn't close, you're probably okay. And then your tool you could set up additional settings on your tool. But if this area isn't here, if this portal panel event never happens, then you would know that proctoring is not turned on. So like if I go ahead and I turn this off, okay, and then I close the test settings and I close this test and then I come back to it, and I click here. Oh, I must not have hit save. Okay, we're gonna turn that off, and we're gonna hit save, and we're gonna hit save. Okay, then we're gonna hit save again. I didn't hit save before, but if we turn it off and save everything, and then close this settings, now if I go back to my test, and you can see it's doesn't show proctored here, and if I go to settings, edit, I'll never be able to get that event here in my code. This event will never happen, and so I know not to do anything with settings. So basically you base this off of whether these settings, whether this panel shows up or not. And if I go ahead, well actually what I want to show you now, and then I'll go ahead and turn it back on, but in your code, you're always going to get the content ID and the course ID. And the content ID is the content ID for this piece of content. So if you go and make a call to that course ID and content ID, you'll see that the REST API call, if you set up a REST API integration for your proctoring solution, you'll see that here under proctoring, we see everything is set to false. So you can make a REST API call and you would know that there's no proctoring on this piece of content. Now, and then we'll also not get any kind of proctoring settings panel in our integration code. So now if I go and I turn this back on, go to my settings here. Now I'm not showing any panels because my proctoring is off. I do have a link, but when I click this link, I see turn on proctoring, but I don't get that message. I don't get that message about proctoring in my integration. I don't get course content assessment settings, proctoring panel settings. That doesn't show up. That won't show up because there is no proctoring settings panel. This area right here is the proctoring settings panel. So when I turn this on, now I get the event. I got the proctoring settings event from Ultra. Let's see if I can find it. I'm going to pause while I find it. There it is right there. I did not get that event until I turned on my proctoring. And so now that I've got that event, I know that this panel exists and I can put content in it. And my code can do whatever it needs to do with settings. Okay, the other thing is that if I'm using the REST API version of this, once the person turns it on and hits save and save again, you can see that this comes on, proctored assessment, and if I go here to my REST API call and I check that out, you can see that now under proctoring, okay, hold on, I gotta find this. I know it was there because I did it a moment ago. So after the test has been set to be proctored and saved, now if your integration comes in and makes this REST API call to find information about this piece of content, the assessment or the test, you can see that proctoring it has a little bit more information than it did a moment ago. It has the information about your LTI tool that is doing the proctoring. Okay, thank you for watching. So to recap, there are two solutions. One is if your integration code just never does settings unless it sees this event, this proctoring panel settings event, because you're not going to get a proctoring panel settings unless their proctoring is turned on. So then you would want to show the settings, and you want to show the settings, use the panel that you're given to show the settings. It makes it very convenient for the user. I'll just show you that again real quick. Configure proctoring settings. It's turned on. This panel right here where I put some text is the very convenient place to put settings for the user, for your tool to give settings. And if you use that, that's great. If you needed another panel, then you can probably launch over to your tool, put the settings elsewhere, but this is the best place to do it. And this is actually what you prescribe. If you put it elsewhere, I'm not certain how it will behave. And then the other way to do it is to have your tool make a REST API call before it tries to do anything with settings, and then you could determine whether this proctoring is set to turned on, and you could even check for your tool to know that your tool has its proctoring enabled. Okay, thank you for watching. I hope this is helpful.